Alrighty, welcome back from break. Just wanted to remind you of a couple of things. The presenter one-on-ones, we noticed that the sign-up sheets are pretty bare. And want to encourage you again, the schedule of the people who are available are on the blue sheets, and if you want to sign up, we'd encourage you to do that. The other thing I want to encourage you to do is speaker evaluation forms, again, after each of the keynotes and each of the sessions today. There'll be people standing at the door to collect them after Joe's talk this morning. These are really important because these go back and give feedback directly to the speakers. They appreciate it. All right. It's now my pleasure to introduce Joe Justice, and let me read his bio. Consultant at Scrum, Inc., and inventor of extreme manufacturing project management. Joe Justice is founder of Team WIKISPEED, an all-Scrum volunteer-based green automotive prototyping company. He's the principal thought leader, a principal thought leader in Scrum, a TEDx speaker, and coach for Agile hardware and manufacturing teams worldwide. He consults with and coaches teams on implementing Scrum at all organizational levels for both software and physical manufacturing. Joe's been widely recognized for his work in reducing time to value in organizations globally and within Team WIKISPEED. This is going to be a real treat for us. I'm really tickled to have Joe Justice. Joe, please.
Thanks, Lee. Hi guys, is the mic level good? Yeah, awesome. I'm Joe Justice. I'm a Scrum consultant with Scrum Incorporated, and I'm the team lead of Team WIKISPEED. Team WIKISPEED's my hobby. That's how it started. After work, nights and weekends, attempting to make ultra-efficient cars and social good projects. We now do make and sell 109 mile per gallon car, EPA city highway, at $25,000. We use the techniques you guys use and have mastered in software in another domain, in hardware manufacture. We use Agile, Lean, and Scrum. This is only possible because we use object-oriented architecture. Here you can see the 8 modules of one of the WIKISPEED cars being assembled. Because of the modular architecture, we're able to switch the pieces on the fly, hot swappable. So we can develop all 8 in parallel because they're loosely coupled. There isn't a ripple effect of change across module boundaries. And we can iterate one at a time. This allows us to make meaningful updates to our cars every week, which is different than the 3 to 7 year cycle that most mainstream automotive companies use. Here's what one of our cars looks like all put together. This one was built at Lockheed Martin to train their space systems engineers. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Here's our current state, our joint venture factory in Renton, Washington. This is near one of Boeing's plants. We have it set up for 50 Scrum teams of 4 to 5 people to build 50 cars in parallel instead of traditional mass manufacturing assembly, which reduces the cost to make the same thing. Instead, we optimize to be able to produce something new every time. And it turns out now we're able to do that at an even lower cost than traditional mass manufacturing of the same thing. It's because of that object-oriented architecture piece that people in software have known about since the 80s. We call this extreme manufacturing. The picture behind me is from a write-up from an Italian open source thinker that was then republished in Forbes and quoted in CNN Money. And their stance was, this might be the biggest social good gift to humanity. Which, well, that might be overstating it, but some people are thinking that the cost reductions, speed reductions, and flexibility to deliver something new to the customer when wielded for social good initiatives might be the biggest, coolest thing there is. CNN Money said, this is how all companies need to run. Oh, cool, thanks, guys. It looks just like the backlog boards that we've all been using for software. My background was .NET. C# development. And the first job I had out of college was a shop that was trying Scrum. It was a Fortune 50 company, and they scaled it out across their entire company, and I didn't know any differently. I just thought it was the difference between the academic training I had in college and the real workforce. And I've been in Scrum deliveries ever since. So I guess you could say I'm a Scrum native, an Agile native. So with these backlogs that we're used to pulling from, we know what we're going to do next in the to-do column. We know what people are doing now in the doing column. We know what's waiting for review or code check-in or automated tests to run in the review column. If we have fantastic gated check-in, we don't even need a review column anymore. And then we have the done column, which typically means now continuous delivery. Well, when we're doing it in hardware, we add columns for the other pieces of deliveries we're doing. Like there's a carbon fiber column. Has it gone through the carbon fiber tests? There's an aluminum column. Has it been machined within spec and tested accordingly? We add columns specific to the type of work we're doing, and then we're able to do them in companies and teams that deliver multiple types of work at once. So tasks about software flow through. Tasks about project management flow through. Talks about legal, finance, HR, all flow through the same backlog. We found that each of our cars had a whole bunch of waste that happened to be insulative foam. One of the methods we use to reduce cost when we're making new cars each week is we machine them out of big blocks of foam that are made from stacking slabs of foam that we buy from Home Depot or Lowe's, and then we wrap them in carbon fiber. Then we take the carbon fiber off and we have a car body, and we put it on an aluminum frame. When we make a new car each time, we have all this extra foam. So we'd been splitting it down and insulating our shops with it. Well, now we had all these hyper-insulated shops and said, what are we going to do next? Start throwing it away? We said, let's try to start making ultra-efficient, compact homes for the involuntarily homeless. And here's the first prototype. We found that a human's body heat with no external power puts out about 100 watts of heat an hour. So like a 100-watt light bulb in a closet, it actually would get pretty hot if it was insulated. By making this little insulated shelter, it's able to warm the temperature 20 degrees Fahrenheit versus the outside temperature just from the body heat of the occupant, which would make some very cold nights survivable for a lot of people. The inventor of Scrum, Dr. Jeff Sutherland, he's 72 now. He ran the first Scrum team in 1993. He heard about this. He heard about Scrum being used in automotive manufacturing and then even social good initiatives. That resonated with him, and where he says Scrum comes from, the Grameen Bank, and its non-for-profit mission. And he asked me to run a class with him. For a process nerd like me, that'd be like a musician having, I don't know, Madonna call them up and say, I want to make a song with you. I was totally starstruck to have Jeff Sutherland on the phone. And we came and taught a class together. And I gave examples of how this can work in hardware, principally from automotive manufacturing, but some of the clients I was doing during the day in Scrum coaching. And Jeff ran the Certified Scrum Master class. Well, he liked it, and he hired me. That's why I get to be here today. Scrum Inc. sponsors me and these build parties where we bring the 8 modules of the WIKISPEED car around so that people that already understand all the basics of agility, or some that are even brand new to them, can see how it can be applied to many different domains. They can go out and start doing awesome in any type of business vertical. For more information on every piece I'm going to talk about, including the data I'm going to bring up and online courses that go deeper into what I'm mentioning, you can mine them from scruminc.com. So if part of this presentation is something you want to mine in the future or send to somebody you know, this website has that data. Here's an example of agility in hardware from a company in New Zealand. They make radio base stations. They take a radio signal in, decrypt it if they have to, clean the signal, boost the signal, re-encrypt it if they have to, and broadcast it out the other end. This is what it looks like under the shell. It's about the size of a 4U server rack, and they make them for military, community watch, ambulatory services, shop floor coordination, etc. And they flew me and another member of Team WIKISPEED, Tim Meyer, in. You can see Tim's nose right here behind the Kanban board. And they said, we'd like you here for a week to talk to us about how we could apply Scrum in hardware development. And I said, how long does it take you to make a P25 base station right now? They said, well, 2 to 3 years. The fastest we've ever done it was 2 months. We changed one circuit board, and it worked on the first try. But usually 2 to 3 years. Working with a lot of companies now for hardware of about this size, that's about average. I said, let's try to make a new working version of the product in 1 week while I'm there. They said, that'd be really nice. What do you need to make that come true? And Tim and I said, we'll need everyone involved to make the new version in one room. And Tate Communications said, no way. These people all report to different managers in different verticals. They're siloed. They don't even want to work with each other. And their managers would definitely not let them. Plus, they're all allocated to multiple projects at once. Does this sound familiar to anybody? And I said, I think I know why it's taking you 2 to 3 years to develop these new hardware solutions. Let's try it for 1 week. And if we have a working product coming out the other end, maybe we can call it success. They said, okay, but just 1 week. So in this room, they have people designing circuit board flows. They have soldering irons and soldering hoods. They have an automated pick-and-place machine that puts circuits on a circuit board with a computer-controlled arm inside a hood. They have the embedded software developers. They have the cloud app software developers that coordinates these items, and a desktop app that configures these base stations. And they had marketing and even the person that wraps it and puts it in a box and wraps that in cellophane and ships it, all in one room. And it worked. The team launched on Monday, and they had their product owner, a customer proxy, use the product and put it through its demo tests that Friday. They voted to keep doing it, but here's the problem that created. On the manufacturing floor, they said, you used to give us a new design every 2 to 3 years. Well, then we'd close down during the holidays, reconfigure the line, and start producing the new product. Well, now you're giving us new product every 2 weeks. In some cases, like that first week, every 1 week. It takes us longer than that to reconfigure the line. We'll never be able to make the thing you're asking us to make. Now, they were already Lean Six Sigma. They had a very mature Lean initiative to eliminate waste and variance from their manufacturing process. The problem is, innovation is variance. And sometimes the way Lean Six Sigma is applied, there's nothing in Lean Six Sigma that's against innovation, but sometimes the way it's applied eliminates the innovation too, to just make the same thing very, very well, very efficiently. So we had to add, in our case, I added what I knew, Scrum on top of it. So they have their Kanban board behind them here, and it was already saying, here's the customer shipments coming in. We turned it into a Scrum backlog with all of their work. So now there's a tag that goes through that says, figure out how to reduce the cost and time to reconfigure the line. Then they were already doing daily stand-up meetings to say, what inventory do we have and where and when does it ship? They relaunched that as a Scrum team with a Scrum Master and a product owner to facilitate whatever the cards were going through their backlog, not just producing orders of the same type of delivery. They got it down to 1 week. They got it down to within 1 week they were producing volume of the new product. In fact, they were able to do it in a morning through sprinting through it. And it took them several sprints to figure it out. A lot of the things they did were putting their CNC machines on casters so they could roll in and out of the line, and propagating the skill to reprogram those machines. Because it used to be one expert, right, that would come in and configure the machine over the holidays with their assistant. Well, instead they paired so that everyone on the line could do some of that. Well, now they've got a new product that's changing as fast as, if they decide to, every week. How to make sure the defect rate stays low. How to make sure the quality is still really high. In software, we do it with gated check-in. In test-driven development. In hardware, we did exactly the same thing. Here's what happened. We said, we need to have test fixtures first, and instead of testing 1 out of every 1,000 parts on the line, because they're all supposed to be the same, we need to test every part. So these tests need to be run very quickly. This guy takes a piece of cardboard and folds it into a specific shape and wraps it in foil tape. He then walks over to the line, and they can see each other. They're about 20 steps away, and he sets it on the line. And there's a lady there that sets the new circuit board in that piece of cardboard. She then swings down a probe that does a continuity test and a logic test, and she gets a red light or a green light. The board passes or it fails. If the board's not held in the right place, she'll get a faulty result or maybe damage the board. So as they make a new board each week, this guy folds a holder and takes it over, and she says, it wiggles a little bit on the top right corner. We need to do it again. He says, okay. He makes a new one, sets it down. She says, yes, that's it. He walks back, and behind him is a milling machine. He takes a block of aluminum that costs right about $40, and he machines it into the circuit board holder. So it holds the circuit board so it doesn't move. That part cost $40, and it'll last through thousands of part runs. They can make a new one each week at a loss of only $40, or they can keep using the same one if that circuit board shape and its continuity terminal areas doesn't happen to change for a while. By doing test-driven development, just like we've all been knowing is a good idea in software for a long time, they're able to test each part in the time it takes it to flow through the line. They said, well, wow, this is really working. How do we keep the pace of change up? They did what's called a whole company retrospective. The company at that time was right about 1,500 people. They took 1/10 of them and invited them from all across the company, from the janitor to the COO, and put them in one room, and they each, in 30 seconds or less, said one thing that they would want to change in the next week about the company that they think they could change. The company as a whole decided which one it was going to be. It took them less than an hour, and then they did it, because 1/10 of the whole company's in the room. It didn't need to go off for a plan to be made. It didn't need to go off for budget procurement. It didn't need to go out to have a committee launched to evaluate it. 1/10 of the entire company was there. If they said, yeah, let's do it, it happened. The budget was pulled right there. That means that the company can never be more than 7 days behind the competition, and they can't have a really good idea that's more than 7 days old. This is what we're calling extreme manufacturing. There's Scrum design teams in software, in hardware, in HR, in legal, in finance, in the board of advisors. There's Scrum manufacturing teams on the floor, so they're able to flow whatever work, changes to their work in addition to fulfilling client orders. And this is all enabled with object-oriented architecture. It seems the good practice with object-oriented architecture is to, at the top level, have less than 10 modules. Now, they can have sub-modules, and they can ripple. There could be a hierarchy if you need to. But what less than 10 seems to be doing, in the clients I'm working with, is anyone on the team can say, here's the piece I'm working in, and here's how it fits into the top-level landscape. How many projects have we been on where there's 20 teams, 20 divisions, and they're all on time, but the project still fails? This helps eliminate integration delay because they're all building to a known contract, a known interface between modules, and there's less than 10 at the top level, which makes even the architecture elegantly simple if we take a little bit of time to make that come true. And it allows for agile architecture and emergent architecture. This is the backlog of Team WIKISPEED, the car company I do as a hobby after work, after coaching with Scrum Inc. And it's live. So if you wanted to take a look, you could see it at carca.com/WIKISPEED. What's cool about this is these backlog items, these virtual sticky notes, have embedded YouTube videos. You can see these little icons here. Those are people they're assigned to or YouTube videos. What that means is we can have demo videos come in from anywhere all over the world showing I've just finished this thing in the backlog, meeting the acceptance tests. Here it is, it's in the mail. And most of the time we never meet each other. Team WIKISPEED, because of this, is in 20 countries with a little over 500 people. Most of them I've never met, and yet we build road legal cars. This is only practical because we do test-driven development and because we make our backlog public. So if somebody wants to change our cruise control algorithm, for example, They see a card in the backlog saying that that's important. They see it has relatively high priority. And they see the link in the card to our GitHub account. They click on it, and they see a YouTube video of the last person that touched the branch saying, here's what I was trying to do, and here's where I got. This is my demo. Here's what's working. I've commented out the stuff that's not, so it's a stable build. They're able to pull it, check it back in, and if it passes acceptance tests, we deploy it to our cars. Done and done. Now, these demo videos, we keep less than 5 minutes.
WIKISPEED SGT01 pulling away from a stop sign outside of Hillsdale, Michigan. Driver Brian Ford, passenger Joe Justice, and this is Rob Beresford. Holy cow, they're just gone, Johnson. That's that.
That demo video was from way before we thought we were done. The car didn't even look like a car. It looked just like an aluminum box. But it was the minimum that met road legal safety spec, so we could start testing it on road. By posting the demo video public, we received a flood of additional investment. Someone bought the car when it looked like that, way before we thought it was done. And a whole bunch more team members joined. Team WIKISPEED does no traditional financing, and yet we're a credentialed road legal automotive manufacturer, which is traditionally considered to be a very capital-intensive industry to enter. We do it all through organic funding that comes from publishing our demo videos. Our shops in 20 countries are run from people sending us $10 a month through PayPal after watching our demo videos. We built this car in 3 months, and it posted over 100 miles per gallon city highway. It was aesthetically challenged. We called it the orange shoebox in team. It let us prove some of the ideas. It let us see that with an internal combustion engine only, not even a hybrid, we were able to get ultra efficiency and meet road legal safety regs. But we needed to make it gorgeous if people were going to consider driving it in every day on their way into work. So about 6 months later, we received this CAD, and we built this car in a weekend. Put it on top of the same mechanicals, but a carbon fiber, more aesthetically pleasing, we hoped, shape. And it was put on the main floor of the largest auto show in the world, January 2011, the North American International Auto Show, where 750,000 people walked past it and more than 50,000 people of the credentialed press. They put us on the main floor between Ford and Chevrolet. We were terrified. How are these industry giants going to react to some startup that says, we can build new cars every week of a whole different design, and you guys, your old thought thinking, have to wait till you build a whole new factory to even change your transmission? Were they going to put us floating face down in the Detroit River? We had no idea. What did happen absolutely surprised me, and I didn't expect it. The first day of that show is called the Industry Preview. And it's where the execs from all the auto companies come out to meet each other and see each other's products for the first time. And I'm hanging out with the other automotive execs. Putting myself in that category feels a little big, but there we are. And in turn, the ones who stopped by our exhibit, which was actually a lot of them, shook my hand and said, good job, go get 'em. I wouldn't have guessed that at all. I've had a lot of time to think about why that might be, and here's what I think it is. I think a lot of them want to make changes more quickly, and if they could only figure out how to get their company to do it, they would. Luckily, we're in a room full of people, and with a lot more online, that know about how Agile, Lean, and Scrum work. What I'd like to encourage us is to make sure we don't think it's limited just to software and start helping a lot of these other companies that are really curious about it if only they knew how. And when we think about test-driven development, maybe we start thinking about what would that mean to an engine, or to a bank's cash flow, or to a credit card system, or a food bank, or an organic CSA, and how to do it elegantly with our code. We were put on the cover of Bitcoin magazine because we started accepting Bitcoin to purchase our cars. And we were the first car company to do that. And we got a flood of additional orders. To even keep up, we had to refine our use of these processes. We had big Scrum teams. We split them into groups of 4 to 5 people, every one with a product owner, a Scrum master, and team members. And they each had a backlog. In this picture, one of the car bodies is being switched across two cars. They're modular, so you can do that. You can swap them. By being more formal about our Scrum process, we were able to accelerate velocity and keep up with client order. Then we had to embrace the flood of new team members that wanted to come in and help out, which was totally awesome, but we didn't have time to set up a training practice. Some of these people we might see for a night. Some of them we might see for a week, after work nights and weekends. Some might stay for years. But if someone's only there for a night, working with us for maybe 2 hours, we need to make sure they've built a part of a customer car to road legal quality. So we instituted some of the XP practices, pairing and swarming. Here, 2 team members, Kurt Roy and Martin Val, are building one of our engines. In this way, as soon as someone walks in the room, they're paired with someone experienced, and they both just start building a customer delivery. They pull the card from the backlog, they put it in doing, they do it together, it goes through acceptance tests. If it passes, they're invited to do it again if they want to, and then they're right about ready to pair with someone new themselves. That propagates skills out across the team without time spent writing documentation that needs to be updated and isn't directly productive. Then we received this rendering from Rob Moorbacher of Moore Composites. I hadn't met him before. He just sent it to me through Windows SkyDrive in that case. Now we use Dropbox. And we voted on it as a team and said, that's gorgeous. We should build that. So we did, and we were invited to do the closing keynote at Agile 2012 in Grapevine, Texas. That car was built backstage in 2.5 hours by people who had never seen it before. We posted a backlog of sticky notes of here's how we think this thing should be assembled. It was the very first one. Here's the acceptance tests to know when we're done. And they wheeled it out on the stage. Done. And they've got it built, and we put it through acceptance tests, and then we deliver it to a customer. And we'd never met those people before. It lets anybody who's interested be our team. We found that by sharing what we were learning, we got higher hit return than anything we did that was like marketing. So we started doing Reddit, Ask Me Anything, and posting what we thought we were learning and discovering on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. And that got more tweets, links, and better coverage than any ad we ever bought. So that became our entire marketing strategy. Then Mary and Tom Poppendick flew into my garage. They said, we're writing a book on the lean mindset, and we want to use you as a case study. I love Mary and Tom Poppendick. And I said, this is amazing, thanks. They drove the car, and Mary and Tom said, you need to be more lean. And I said, please tell me how. They said, here's this circuit board you're using that we see, you've told us, costs you a little bit more than $500 to buy from American Honda Motor Company through their racing division. Why don't you replace it with an open source circuit board on Arduino that's $24? We said, that's a great idea. And they said, well, we can go further. That's lean in the traditional hardware sense. It's cheaper. You're eliminating waste without frustrating your customer. But this is even better. That circuit board you used to buy was a proprietary programming interface that used a non-standard IDE. So not many people knew how to use it. When you needed to make a change to it, it was really hard for you to find people to update code, embedded code on that circuit board. And we said, yes, Mary and Tom, that's exactly right. They said the Arduino uses processing. It's a language that's a derivative of C. Hundreds of thousands of people already know how to do it. The IDK is open source and online, and since a lot of people are using it, it's improved all the time. And there's even NetDuino, where they can write it in C# native on board on the chip and use Visual Studio if they want. We said, thank you, Mary and Tom, and we relaunched all of our hardware as these Arduino pieces. And that's an initiative that's still going on as we replace every circuit in the card with these open source Arduinos. They're hardened variant that's weather tight and EMF shielded and that kind of thing. And they're $28. Is it repeatable? We had a tremendously fun time and success story putting the most efficient internal combustion cars on the road out. Can this work anywhere else? John Deere flew 3 managers out to my garage. I was terrified. The garage was this dirty mess, and they were hanging out on a Thursday night as we were building WIKISPEED cars, and they got in and built cars with us. They then launched an initiative inside John Deere to do this. Instead of extreme manufacturing, they called it extreme innovation because they said, we're not just manufacturing, we're doing design. Okay, well, that's fine. In 16 months, their global headquarters had hit 7.2 times their initial velocity. Same employees, per person output was 7.2 times the amount of output per employee with quality. And these are the folks designing the new combines and tractors. I no longer have fear that we'll be able to feed the next population boom. I think they've figured it out. Then they wanted to see if this would scale across their global portfolio. They launched it in India 3 months later, and in 13 months, they'd hit 5.6x velocity. Now in India, this is one of the entire teams. They know the fastest teams on average are 4.6 people. So they have teams of 4 to 5. And if the teams get larger than that, they split them. And those teams will then deliver more in aggregate, and they coordinate through scrum of scrums. And an addition that Deere and Scrum Inc. work together to do, Friends of Teams, Scrum of Scrums, to work with the waterfall teams that are still delivering all around them, to make the next combines and tractors. Then they launched it in Germany 2 months ago, and they've hit double velocity in that time. Then again in Brazil, in Diatuba. We thought maybe this can scale across multiple cultures and other companies, even with traditional mindsets. Then Boeing gave us a call, and I just talked to one of the Boeing employees that we've been back and forthing with this morning again. And they hosted a white tablecloth dinner in my garage. I was once again terrified. It's this dirty garage full of prototype stuff. I mean, we try to clean it, but it's a garage. And one of their execs, he's a double PhD in computational fluid dynamics and finite element analysis. 2 very complex, different, but mutually complementary disciplines. And he's walking around my garage and says, you know, Joe, the tools we use at Boeing are more complex. They're more sophisticated. Like, yes, I'm sure they are. He said, but you're light years ahead of us in terms of culture. That's not what I expected. I thought he'd say, it's awesome you have daily stand-up meetings so everybody all across the world in your team knows the current state of what's getting done. Or I thought he would have said, it's awesome that once a week you guys have demos so everybody can see what's happening now and what got done. Or it's awesome that you invite your customers in before you're done to help reprioritize the order in which you're doing stuff. But no, he said, it's not those practices, it's the culture that you want to do those practices. That blew my mind. And I think he's right. And my clicker doesn't click anymore. Or my PowerPoint has exploded. Hold, please. Your call is very important to us. Oh, good. You know that Microsoft Surface James Whitaker was talking about a second ago? It is awesome, but it's now sideways and frozen. We're moving? Success. Then Lockheed Martin said, we want to relaunch our engineering practices to use this method. And I said, you're kidding. This is something we're experimenting with that we're figuring out in garages and storage units for fun after work. And they said, we've just lost our contract to resupply the International Space Station. We lost it to SpaceX, and the rumor is they're using Scrum. They can resupply the International Space Station with crew and food for half the price we can. We're going to go out of business in our space division unless we do something different. Okay? So they launched the initiative, and they put Scrum in space. Then Raytheon, well known for the Patriot missile system, but all types of work. I don't get to share their velocity, but across their portfolios of teams, they've gone from White Sands when they shoot missiles at automated drones to test the targeting accuracy in varying conditions. They went from more than 200 bugs per physical field test to less than 3. And they've said, wow, we think this extreme manufacturing thing is useful. They've also had a great uptick in velocity, but I don't get to share it. But what I do get to say, though, is some of the missile systems are launching from the ocean floor into space, which is ridiculous. Then I got to be part of the Xbox One launch. I was one of the 2 Scrum coaches for the teams doing the Xbox One next generation UI and graphical user interface. And then HP Labs in Palo Alto. And their training, their launches across these companies was to bring in the 8 modules of the WIKISPEED car and cater it and drink beer and build it by pulling from a backlog with no other training. And then they would do a Scrum training, a 2-day course, and relaunch their teams. And that seemed to be what it took to propagate it, because no one could say, I'm not sure this works. They'd all done it. They'd built something in hardware as Scrum teams, and they coordinated through Scrum of Scrums. That was successful enough that we tried it publicly. We called it an Extreme Manufacturing Black Belt class. We just made up the certification. What we decided it means is that they'd built a car or a complex hardware project, but in our case, we started with a car, from end to end, from beginning to delivery. And they'd done it all in Scrum teams using Scrum of Scrums and the engineering practices that comprise extreme manufacturing. Things like test-driven development for hardware and software, because there's software in all these projects as well. Pairing and swarming, user stories, embedding the customer into all the demos. If they've done those practices and produced the product from end to end, we called them black belts. And we hosted the first class. And the next one is in the end of August in Seattle. Then TomTom gave us a call. Volvo doesn't ship with a TomTom navigation system. It has another vendor. Their Scrum coaches hacked Volvos and installed TomTom on the in-dash system, and then they bought these watches from Kickstarter that run Android OS, and they installed TomTom on the watches, and they did it in a week, and said, see, TomTom, we can deploy new products faster than you thought you could, because typically it takes them 2 to 3 years. Now they're seeing that scaled out. That's with their partner that I've gotten to rock with a little bit called Zabia, based in Holland. And they're all now using extreme manufacturing as well. In fact, right now, while I'm saying this, if I've got the time zone conversion right, they have Zabia Day in Rotterdam, where they're launching the extreme manufacturing practice there to then bring it to clients like Volvo. They brought me to the hydrogen electric car race team at TU Delft. And this team is directly funded by the government. Part of the reason why is their process improvements are letting them speed up so much in patentable tech for the university and for the government in hydrogen fuel cells. And they're having a great time doing it through racing. The way they're able to achieve that funding is with 5-minute or less demo videos every week. I'd like to show one to you. This is about 3 minutes long. It feels like an eternity because the amount of data they cover. And has totally dramatic music.
Over the years, the way which we planned projects has completely changed.
It was quite hard to start because you didn't begin from scratch.
I brought Joe over here to the Netherlands.
we decided that it would be time for a change in terms of how are we planning projects, or how are we going to approach the next couple of months.
Their current iteration speed is about 2 years, from a new idea to getting to deployed and tested. We'd like to see if we can get that to half the time. Then we'd like to see if we can half that again.
After we had kind of a car with all the systems inside already, but so many bits and components to work on, we needed to have some more interactive view where everybody in the team knows exactly what's going on in all of the other departments.
For that, we use Scrum, and that's why I was invited here by Xebia. Xebia, here in the Netherlands, uses Scrum to improve the performance of many different businesses worldwide. They brought me in to see if that technology could be applied at some of their hardware clients, and we got to hang out with the engineers here at TU Delft to see what might accelerate them. They've been using pieces of lean product planning and some Scrum for the last 3 weeks. They're getting ready to do their first Kaizen, or their first retrospective, to see how they're going to tune it to go faster.
Started having whiteboards with post-its on it, and then decided that it was a really nice and interactive way of planning our whole year and every week of our project. And well, so far it's going great. We're learning more every day, and the boards become more interactive every week.
He gave some tips about our Scrum method, and I think it was very useful. I think we can speed up the process due to him.
Working with Xebia has been fantastic to bring hardware Scrum practices to Xebia's already advanced software Scrum practices. With teams like TU Delft and the hydrogen electric car racing team, we get to see what can happen when very fast-moving teams iterate in hardware. Now putting Scrum in it, we think it might go even twice as fast.
By using the Scrum method, you can do awesome things like zero emission racing, and that's the thing that we need to innovate. And by doing that by racing, he really liked that.
That demo video was filmed across 3 hours, and then one of their team members likes to do video editing as a hobby. In the next day, they'd composed this. Now, everybody knows the current state of what happened that week. They're able to do these each week and keep in touch with all of their supporters and the government and their stakeholders with no other meetings or communications. Then they brought me to one of the Scrum schools where they use Scrum to teach. It happened to be a high school science class. I walked in, sat next to the professor, and was asking him questions about how Scrum launches. I heard the bell ring, but I noticed he didn't stand up, so I figured it was some not quite class start time bell. But I noticed the students had come in, and they took out folders, and they took out backlogs, and they pinned them on the wall, and it was sticky notes of everything they needed to learn that semester. And they do it kindergarten through high school, but this was a high school science. And they were moving cards to done and pulling out industry journals on glass and the molecular structure of glass and molecular algebra, how to add two molecular structures together and know what the positive charge is going to be and what the substances are going to be at the end. And they're learning themselves, and they're not talking to the teacher. Then they do a demo about halfway through the class, and the teacher gives them their full attention, and he accepts or declines and says, here's what you need to do, and he helps them reprioritize their backlogs, and they go back to it, and then they leave. I'd never seen a class that focused that needed that little oversight, ever. And the Scrum classes say that they finish the semesters 20% early with 10% higher test scores. Then I got invited to Paris, France, the UNESCO World Heritage Headquarters, to the Global Financial Forum on Sustainability. And I was asked to brief the EU delegates on how to stabilize the euro and the European financial sectors. I said, okay. Well, I can talk about Scrum. I'll share that. And the EU delegate said, that's it. That's the method to stabilize the euro and the European economy. They said their job is now is to pass legislation to make it the default for companies in Europe, the EU countries, to use Scrum. Right now, when they apply for government aid, they need to give their 5-year plan of how the return's going to happen. They're saying, no, we need a prioritized backlog instead that's not tied to time. And that's apparently what they're doing now. That allowed me to go on an international tour, working with companies in biotech, pharmaceuticals, spoke with a group in Cambridge on 3D printing human organs, which blew my mind. Then the financial sector, even more, the Royal Bank of Canada. And then later this month, I go to Pictet in Gstaad, Switzerland. And what they do is they bring the wealthiest 0.001% of the world's families together, and they throw, I think it's a blowout party, because how else are you going to attract those people? And then they have people come up and brief them on the trends that are going to be shaping their investment portfolio. They're having me talk about Scrum beyond software because they think it's the most disruptive piece of occurrence to the financial industry. Here's why they think so. Here's data from Standish Group. This is their chaos report. They update it each year on success ratio of projects by methodology. On the left, there's waterfall projects where we do all the planning up front, and we say, here's when we're going to ship, and here's what's going to be in it. And that's traditional project management. Anybody who's ever gotten an MBA has been trained in this. This is the default. And we see there's a 14% success rate. In fact, it's a little lower now. 14% of their projects shipped on time and on budget. 29%, almost a third, are complete failures. Nothing ships. All money spent, no result. Not even a piece salvaged. If it's a software project, not a single line of deployed code. That's almost a third of the time. And then more than half the time it's challenged. It's over budget. The client is reticent to make a purchasing decision with the final result, and they have to resell pieces, those types of scenarios. Then, companies who responded that they use a form of Agile found that they'd decreased total failures by about 300%. They'd increased total successes by about 350%. That is exactly why Pictet thinks the world's wealthiest 0.001% is going to be very interested that these methods might apply beyond software. And that's exactly why you guys, as a moral imperative, need to share what you know about agility and software all across other domains. What's interesting here, though, is that 49%, almost half, of projects reported as Agile are still challenged. Now, there was a follow-up survey done saying, okay, which type of Agile do you use? Right about 49% said we don't know or no documentation. And that was their definition of Agile. Right about half said we're XP plus Scrum, or we're Crystal, or we're a pure play Scrum, or we're a pure play XP team. 75% were Scrum and something else. It's the dominant method from the State of the Agile survey put on by the Agile Alliance. This might be why this data could be important. After seeing this data and talking to these companies and some more, I think I've come to what might be the whole point. We're getting the value of this if we've made it cheap to change our mind. If we've reduced the cost to make change, we can run quick experiments and see if they speed us up. We can take the good ideas that we have and see if they work in the marketplace faster than we ever had before. We're not stuck doing the same thing we did yesterday, releasing the same product we did yesterday, which is exactly what manufacturing has been based on since the Industrial Revolution, and exactly what agility broke. I'd like to invite you guys to get hands-on with this. At 11:30, across from where lunch is starting, we'll kick off our first of 4 sprints. In those sprints, we'll lay out the 8 modules of one of our WIKISPEED ultra-efficient cars. Now, this car has already been sold. Someone's already bought it, and they know it's going to be built at a conference by people who've never seen it before. So we're going to put it through all our test-driven development tests to make sure it's road legal and safe before it gets shipped. And we've actually brought 7 of the 8 modules. The hotel asked us not to bring the gasoline engine in, so they didn't have to have it approved by the fire marshal and have gasoline, transmission fluid, brake fluid, MSDS sheets. However, we have the other 7. So it's the car minus the engine module. And what I'd like to invite you guys to do is during any of the sessions during today of the conference, stop by and we'll launch as Scrum teams right at the start of the session. The first one being 11:30, the next one being when the next session starts on the program, and so on and so on. We'll do the shortest Scrum orientation ever, form as Scrum teams, and start building a car together. What I hope the people who choose to participate will get out of this is they'll say, I have not just heard about Agile outside software, I've done it. And there shouldn't be a question of, can it work? It should be a question of, where do I want to apply this? Where would be the most impact? As a result, if those people choose to write down their name and an email, we'll email them an Extreme Manufacturing Yellow Belt certification, which we made up. What we think that means is they've spent at least 1 sprint in a Scrum team building part of a complex hardware project, and they've used test-driven development, contract-first design, object-oriented architecture, in this case hardware, etc. Now, we brought our Arduinos too, so people who want to do some embedded software can do an update to some of our fuel economy tech or some of our fuel efficiency add-ons. Folks, if I don't have a chance to get to a question or a question comes up later, you can reach me at justice@scruminc.com. You can tweet to me at WIKISPEED or to Scrum Inc. at Scrum Inc. What's fun about both those Twitter handles is they don't go to just me. They go to the whole team WIKISPEED or all of Scrum Inc. So you can say things like, Joe says the car does this, and you built the first version in 3 months. Did you? And someone else might answer from the pool of a little bit over 500 people. They all have access to our Twitter. But I'd like to see if there are any questions here. I'd be happy to field some for, well, just a few minutes. And then we have break, and then at 11:30 we start the first build across from right at the top of the stairs. You'll see the car parts and hear the dance music. And they're bringing beer there at 5, because that's fundamental to this process. But if there are any questions now, I'll take a few minutes and answer some. If folks are typing them in, a microphone will read them out. So you can, the online participants can type them into your questions box as well. If there is one, raise your hand and a mic runner will come to you. Oh, I think they were scratching their chin. Oh, there it goes. If I follow the question, it's specific to the Agile approach to testing, so test-first design or test-driven development. Hopefully they can type back and say, yeah, that's where I'm aiming, and how long it's been in use. Most of these companies started their practice right about 2 years ago or less. So that's the time frame. And most of them used to only measure defects found in field, if at all, and that was their quality metric, and they didn't have other tests. Physical parts, they'd measure the shape or the weight or logic tests, but those were typically 1 out of every 1,000 or n number of 1,000. The idea of test-first design before they start creating the product has been new to every company I've come into so far outside of software, and even to them, a lot of them in software too. And those have started their practice 2 years ago or less. If I followed, there was also a question of how it's going. They're saying that that's one of the primary contributors to their velocity, that and the retrospective, because that gives them their excuse to tune every sprint, which in the companies I work with is typically 1 week. Was there another question? Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
Can you hear me okay? So in one of your earlier examples, Joe, you talked about a client that had resources split across multiple projects, multiple teams, managers, the whole hierarchy, and you said, let's just bring everyone together in a room and go ahead and start working together. So that worked for that particular exercise. Let's fast forward to today. What does the staffing model look like? Do people still belong to different departments, or have they restaffed, reorganized? So that's really the question there.
I love it. If I follow, you're saying when companies are siloed or have people with specific disciplines, they don't work directly together even if they're on the same project, or even they're on multiple projects at the same time, they're matrixed. In the example I gave at Tate's awesome in that they let me show pictures of everything I did there, so that I like to use them as a case study. Everybody got in one room, and I think you're asking, did that continue on? What's the model? Do they still have junior, senior dev roles in particular verticals that are separate, or are they all just team members now, or how did that work? Am I close?
Yes.
Okay. This happens so often that there's a name for it that's not used as commonly as I wish. The first time I saw this name written down was, I think, 2004, Agile 1.0. And what that meant is there are Scrum delivery teams. So it started in mostly software, but they're all the way back in even 2004. There were some Scrum non-software teams, just not very many, and it was just in their delivery teams. And they typically still had different siloed verticals, but they were pulled together for the length of a product. So they became the product team. This was mined from the new product development game white paper by Takeuchi and Nanaka, where they studied how Canon launched the first autofocus camera at the price of a point and shoot and completely disrupted the market. They studied how Honda made the first City and how it met all emissions criteria without a catalytic converter. Completely disrupted the market. And it was these product teams that broke apart silos. Now, both those companies reinstated their silos, slowed back down, lost a lot of market share after they got ahead. The companies that I'm working with, we say Agile 1.0 are these teams stick together in the delivery teams, and that is persisting. Then they have something to aspire to, and the first time I saw this written was right about 2008, Agile 2.0. What that meant is the entire company has relaunched as Scrum teams, not just the delivery teams. It doesn't have to be Scrum, but Scrum's very effective, and more than 70% of all teams doing Agile choose Scrum. But they're using their Agile method. So you have the Board of Advisors Scrum team, and their backlog is evaluate these market opportunities and feed them out. And their demos are become the backlog of more delivery teams. The HR Scrum team backlog is higher fire criteria, bonus criteria, training opportunities, dissolving the perception of a glass ceiling. And their demos are those pieces to the organization. So that would be Agile 2.0, and it's only been written about since about 2008. Then there's Agile 3.0, and I do think this is a progression, and it takes an enormous amount of trust. However, startups aim there very often right from the get-go. What Agile 3.0 does, and the first time I saw this written about was 2010, was they align themselves around work worth doing. So take communications, they said, we make radios. And we said, how can we really care about that? They came to the realization that the ambulatory services in their hometown, Christchurch, New Zealand, used Tate radios. So if one of them or their families needed an ambulance, it was relying on their product. They relaunched the way they talk about their project every day to talk about that, to put it in terms of work worth doing. Their velocity jumped. The other piece of Agile 3.0 is cross-functional Scrum teams, where it's no longer a human resources Scrum team. They've taken a person from that and put them on a delivery team. They've taken a person from the Board of Advisors and put them on the delivery team, and vice versa. So it's a series of multi-skilled Scrum teams, and they're all simply doing work, and there's no hierarchy anymore. Interesting. Zappos claims to be doing a model just like that now. They call it also holacracy. The companies that are doing it are the fastest moving companies with the highest stock trading prices in their markets. It's new, it's challenging. Like I said, the first time I even read about it was 2010, but it seems to be the biggest win right now. I typically know when a company gets it right because all of their competitors come for Scrum training. because they've suddenly lost market share, just like Lockheed Martin did once SpaceX got it and halved the price of their deliveries. Did I talk anywhere near your point, or did I take it a different direction? Oh, great. Thanks. Oh, yeah, and we've got a few more minutes. Yeah, go right ahead.
I had a quick question about transitioning teams who haven't used Agile before.
Right.
So whenever you come into an organization that maybe doesn't have any idea how Agile works, what kind of transition times do you typically see? Like, do you just kind of come in there and flip over the table and say, okay, we're going to do it this way now? Or does it usually take some transition time?
So if I followed, the question was, how long does it take one of these companies to transition?
Right.
Yeah. It's actually really fast. I get some flack and disbelief for this. So I record it when I can and show time lapses and stuff of even the team's backlogs and their delivery teams. Here's pretty much the pattern currently. And we do a retrospective each time we do a team launch and try to do it better. But the company does often a keynote, something like this, where everybody has the idea and they try to see themselves in that story. Then they do a build party where they cycle through all of their staff that's interested. Sometimes if it's a really big company, it's just one vertical. Sometimes if it's only a couple thousand people, it's everybody. And they cycle through in a day or two building the cars. And when they get them done, they then build them in reverse and build them again. And then we ship it and we sell a car, which I like because that helps Team WIKISPEED. After that day or 2 days, I'm really lucky, they're usually pretty pumped. And the people that say, I can't imagine how this would work, are usually saying, oh, okay, I see how this would work. How do we now apply it? And then it goes directly into a team launch, which takes about 5 days per team, and the most we can do is 3 teams at once, 15 people, 3 teams of 5, because 4 to 5 is the fastest team, so that's all I do if I can help it. And we cycle those through across the company. In about 2 months, they usually have double velocity. That's right about what we see. And then unless they abandon, because change is hard, right? I mean, these people they've got to be really motivated because they're going to be working differently and a little bit differently every week as they have a retrospective, and that never ends if the company's going to keep speeding up. So they've got to stay really pumped. So they start prioritizing morale events. They start prioritizing Agile 3.0 stuff like social good events to keep morale up. If they stay with it, and luckily each of my clients so far have, which is largely out of my control. It's their choice. So I'm very lucky I've got a lot of clients that chose to stick with it. Their velocity continues to increase like I got to show in the John Deere data. But it's about 2 months on average is what I'm seeing to double velocity. The kickoff takes about 5 days per team. For the company, it's 1 to 3 days depending on how large the company portion or the whole company that's launching. And then I often come back once a month for the first few months to coach or one of my other team members, and then once a quarter ongoing until they develop an internal coaching practice that is pretty skilled. Did I get even close to your question? I got kind of excited there and sort of went off the rails.
You're fine. That was perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Oh my gosh, you guys are interested. There's even multiple questions. Thanks. And you can email too if I didn't get to one, or tweet. But,
I had a question about you called it the pairing and swarming, when you said you had people come in for a short period of time to help out on the build of the car. How did you pair them up? Do you have a dedicated, like a suspension expert, a transmission expert, a motor expert on hand all the time? Or how do you deal with, a lack of skill or a lack of specific knowledge of a component or of a module?
If I follow, I'm going to repitch it slightly differently and give me a nod or a head shake if I missed it or I got it. How do we deal with rare skill?
Yes.
Am I close?
Yes.
Okay. So Team WIKISPEED has an additional challenge. We're a nonprofit. Nobody gets paid. I think we're the only nonprofit certified automotive manufacturer in the world, I think. We're kind of here to make a point that, hey, ultra-efficient cars could be made now. And so we view all current manufacturers as future partners because we can't afford to compete against them. That'd be ridiculous. So we're sort of goading by showing here you can do it. But we don't, all the money we make from selling our cars goes back into our product and our hardware, and nobody gets paid. So one, no one's paid, so we can't guarantee staff. And two, since everyone's volunteer, I never know who's going to be there. We have build parties every Thursday night and most Sundays, and then people work from the backlog anytime they want, whatever time zone they want. But we look at all the demo videos and create a new demo video every Thursday Pacific time. I couldn't have a suspension expert that I could count on. I don't know. So here's what we do in Team WIKISPEED. This is easier in commercial companies where people get sick or take vacation, but usually they're there, right? And you can have stable teams. In unstable teams, like the build party we're going to be doing out here, where I don't know who's going to show up each sprint, we say, who here knows the most about this for each card? And the cards on the backlog? And say, meet with this person. If you're lucky, try to get them to pair with you, but at least get the download from them on what it takes for this card to be done. What does quality mean? What's the definition of done for this card? Whoever knows the most about it that's there, that's the best we have by definition. Then, when they're done, when they think they're done, they put the card in pending review, and they say, who here knows the most about this? Because it could be someone else. People come and go during sprints. Whoever that is, we'll see if it meets the current definition of done and try to run the automated tests. We do try to make sure that the product owner, which again, we can't guarantee, everyone's volunteer, it's an unstable team, knows how to run all the automated tests. And we never deploy it to a customer's car until we see it's checked off. We see the video of the part, the module, going through all our automated tests. That's how we have to go with unstable teams. With stable teams, much easier, and pairing and swarming. And it's just like you said, pairing with someone who understands the definition of done. They might not know how to do it, but they know what it looks like to be done. And in fact, something I noticed, a little nugget, is when we pair them with someone that knows how to do it, the innovation goes way down. If we pair them with just someone that knows what it means for it to be done, but doesn't know how to do it, we get really innovative, crazy solutions. And they know right away when it's worked because it passed the acceptance test or not. So when we need a breakthrough innovation, we make sure it's people that don't know how to do it. We try to get a bunch of kids there. The youngest Team WIKISPEED member we've had was 3 years old. He joined with his mom and his dad, and he made parts that went onto customers' cars. Totally awesome. Since no one's paid, we can do that legally. Did I get anywhere near your question, or did I? It was close? Okay. If there's follow-on later, you can email. I think I've got time for a more question. I see a hand here. I don't know who has the mic, or if there's one typed in, that's great too. Let's lean that way. We'll take it, and hopefully people will take the time to tweet or email an additional question if there is. But yeah, go ahead, Internet.
This person asks, how do you get people to buy into the Scrum method? We're trying to implement this in our organization, and I already noticed that people are not very open to it. So how do you go about getting them to change their mindsets?
Oh my gosh. Well, I love that this person said, how do you get them to change their mindset? Because in my opinion, and I bet a lot of the people in this room, that's exactly what it is. If they don't care about reducing the cost to make change, and if they don't care about using less stuff without frustrating their customer, they're probably not going to want to do any of the Agile practices, in their case, Scrum. They won't be interested. It won't lead towards their definition of success. If they're not interested in collaborating as a group and they want to work as an individual contributor in their ivory tower, throwing their piece down to the next group, well, then Scrum's not going to help because Scrum's a team collaboration method. Of course they wouldn't want to do it. So how do you get someone to care about that mindset? There's two ways that I'm trying now that seem to be working pretty well. One is make it as fun as you possibly can. If you're able to cater the demos, awesome. The Xbox One team, they had a live band at every demo. Oh, every demo I was in. They're also rich, so they could do that. They had them catered with really nice food. They had multiple kegs of really good microbrews, and they had musical instruments laying all around for people to play with. Music was the theme of a large portion of the Next Gen UI team. And they made it a blast. They made it a party. Everybody wanted to go to demo. They did the same thing to a slightly lesser extent for sprint planning. And they had happy hour in the middle of sprint planning, and it still worked. Just saying. In fact, that's why Scrum calls the meetings ceremonies instead of meetings. The idea is they're supposed to be more like a ceremony that you want to attend than a meeting. So more like a wedding or some rite of passage party. Maybe a bar mitzvah or bar mitzvah maybe. If it's closer to that, people are more likely to want to opt in. It needs to be ridiculously fun. In Team WIKISPEED, you guys will set it up with us in Sprint 1. We have the snack shelf. It's full of healthy snacks and beer. I respect people that don't drink any alcohol for health reasons, but just knowing they could drink it seems to completely change the atmosphere. People are completely willing to take on work they've never tried before and know they have no experience in, if, one, they think there's a pair around or someone to check with, and two, if they know other people around them are drinking. Now, the same people who drink don't drive, but they do build car parts. The other method that works well is when their competitor is pushing them out of business. At Lockheed, for example, I know they do prioritize making Scrum fun. They do prioritize making their Scrum ceremonies more like a ceremony people want to attend and less like meetings. And that tends to make people interested. Well, why is that group having so much fun? Maybe I should do it. Oh, they're doing Agile. Suddenly I care about that very much. But there's no better incentive for the top-down push than they're going to go out of business if they don't make a change. Hopefully companies do it for fun way before then, but a lot of the clients are there because of financial duress. And they say if we keep doing what we're doing, it's a rocky shores ahead. We should attempt something different. If that person had a different angle they were aiming for, I hope they send an email or a tweet so I can follow up. Folks, that's the time we've got. Thank you very much. Sprint 1 starts at 11:30, which is in competition with lunch, but it ends before lunch, and they've promised me that they're going to hold at least desserts for us when we're done. Sprint 1 is a bit extra awesome because that's where we set up the area. It becomes a Scrum room for hardware, so different than we walk in and start building cars. It's what are the essential practices to build a Scrum room for hardware. We actually get to do that in Sprint 1. So for people who are thinking of launching that practice somewhere, that's probably the most enticing sprint for you. Folks, thank you very much.